Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast. Time to hashtag everything. We talk about all the fun, crazy stories on social media. From Instagram to Facebook, Twitter to Tumblr, or probably even Friendster. Join us each week as we explore the quirky side of social media. It's the Golden State Media Concepts social media podcast.
It's simple, such a sad song. The one that we rely on to get us.
Thanks for tuning in to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Hey there, I'm your host, Kayla Moeller. Did everybody do something nice for Earth Day? It was a really beautiful day outside. Unlucky for me, though, I found a dead mouse in my pool. The poor little guy. He drowned, and then I had to get him out and dispose of him. But other than that, it was an okay day. I enjoyed seeing everybody's posts for Earth Day. Just a bunch of beautiful nature photos everywhere I looked. I posted some too from my backpacking trip after college graduation. I was gone for like 5 months and I went all over the place. And I saw monkeys, elephants, jungles, caves, beautiful oceans, waterfalls. So it was nice to reminisce on the trip and to post some cool pictures of the Earth for its 50th anniversary. Or at least since 50th anniversary of us celebrating it. And also don't forget about Earth Day Live. It's the 3-day live stream event with a lot of smart and cool people talking about real issues and addressing our climate emergency. If you missed it, you can still check out the website. There is a lot of great stuff posted there. It's earthdaylive2020.org. The whole reason the live stream happened was because since January, organizers across the U.S. were planning what was to be the largest climate strike in history. It was supposed to be big, like huge, over a 3-day period, but COVID came along and ruined everything. So instead of canceling it altogether, these organizers decided to switch things up and created Earth Day Live in its place. So yeah, good on them for keeping it going. And in one of my podcasts, I mentioned how a tiger at the Bronx Zoo in New York tested positive for COVID a few weeks ago. Well, now 2 house cats have also tested positive for the virus, also in New York. It seems to really only be affecting felines, though, so far. I think dogs are okay. But yeah, these 2 domesticated cats contracted the virus, but they're expected to make a full recovery, which is great. Both of them had just mild respiratory symptoms. And none of these cats, big or small, seemed to have been as sick as when humans get it. But they still show some symptoms nonetheless. But still, experts are saying not to worry. There's not enough evidence to show your pets are at risk or carriers or that you'll give it to your pets. The first cat that was tested, its owner tested negative. So they don't really know how the cat got it. They think it might have contracted it maybe from an outside visitor. And the second cat that tested positive, its owner had the coronavirus like way earlier. So they're not sure if that has any correlation. But they have another cat in that second household too, and that one's fine and does not have the virus. So it just kind of shows that you don't really know who's going to get it or how, including cats. So they're still trying to figure all that out. But they're saying that cats and just pets getting it. It's a really rare circumstance. Otherwise, we'd be seeing this all over the country, and we're just not. These are the only 2 house pets so far in the United States to contract the virus. And they also happen to live in New York, where the epicenter of the virus is in the US. But just like with any illness, if you're feeling sick, don't cuddle all up in your pet's face or let it lick you. Maybe have somebody in the household care for the pets if you're showing symptoms. But if that's not possible, like if you live alone, then just be cautious and smart. Wash your hands before feeding them, that sort of thing. It's not some pressing issue, but it's always good to just be a bit cautious if you're showing symptoms. And also maybe just avoid dog parks right now, just in case. I mean, you really shouldn't be going to dog parks anyways for your own self, but the dogs run around with each other, so you never know. So just take them on a nice, long, isolated walk instead. And some states are starting to open everything back up right now, which is dumb because the same states that are opening things up are the ones who are the last to close up. So last one's in, first one's out. And these states are lucky they don't have big, huge international airports, or they'd be a lot worse off considering how they're handling things. But the main thing I see people talking about opening up are beaches. And I guess if you're going to open something up, then a beach is the best and safest thing because it's outside with lots of space and air. Still, people are going to gather in them though, and that's still not good, but it's better than opening up the theaters or something like that. People are just going to flock to whatever the first thing open is, and I guess the best place to open would be the beach because there's at least opportunity to social distance. But what we don't need are out-of-towners flocking to the beach. Like, stay in your own county. If you don't have a beach, then too bad. Don't travel to LA this weekend. It's more risk. Just stay in your own community. And also, speaking of not traveling to LA, there are supposed to be gusts of wind up to 75 miles per hour on the Grapevine Highway, which is already a really dangerous highway. So stay off the roads and just don't go to the beach if you don't have one in your backyard. You'll live, okay? Coming up next, I'm going to talk about a prominent political figure who just recently lost their brother to COVID. So stay tuned.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Hey, again, before the break, I talked about the 2 house cats that came down with COVID in New York, which are the first 2 cases of pets contracting the virus in the U.S. And uncoincidentally, it happened to be in the same state with the most cases anyways. And I also mentioned how beaches are going to start opening back up here pretty soon, which I think is a bit too early, but if they're going to choose to open something, then a beach is the safest choice for right now. And that no one should travel to a beach. If the beach is where you live, then you're lucky, but don't travel to a beach. Stay in your own community. Especially if you're thinking of taking advantage of the hot Los Angeles sun this weekend. There's going to be a heat wave. And maybe you want to just drive down there and find a nice open beach. That's a bad idea in itself because there's not going to be a nice open beach. Everybody's going to flock there because it's going to be a heat wave. But another reason not to drive there is because there are wind advisories for the weekend with up to 75 miles per hour winds near the Grapevine Highway. And that's a really strong wind. It will be super dangerous to drive that highway, and there's going to be downed trees and power outages. So how about you just stay home? LA is closed till May 15th anyway, and they still might extend it. So I don't know why some beaches are starting to open up. Okay, and if you need a reminder to stay home and keep safe and keep your grandparents and the elderly safe, then listen to this. Former presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren, who is a senator from Massachusetts, has just recently lost her 86-year-old brother due to the virus. She talked about it in a series of tweets, talking about how he was a great leader. He spent his career in the military, in the Air Force. He served in and out of the Vietnam War. And in the last tweet, she said, quote, "I'm grateful to the nurses and frontline staff who took care of him. But it's hard to know that there was no family to hold his hand or to say I love you one more time. And no funeral for those of us who loved him to hold each other close. I'll miss you dearly, my brother." End of tweet. And that's the reality for most coronavirus victims, dying alone. It's horrible, especially being put on a ventilator because most patients who are put on a ventilator don't come off of it and they die. And when you're being put on a ventilator, you're in the thick of it. And you still can't have visitors, so you can't even say goodbye to anyone in person just in case. It's terrible. It's a devastating disease. You never know who it's going to take for the worst. I feel for Elizabeth Warren and any family members who have lost a loved one like this. I can't even imagine. Like, it's just so frustrating. And it's weird because there's like a bit of a warning, but you still can't say goodbye. Like with cancer or AIDS, stuff like that, death crosses your mind. You kind of have time to say goodbye. It's still awful. But this, you have a bit of warning and then still have to die alone. And it's absolutely horrible. Think about how terrified those people must have been lying in that hospital bed with no one around, knowing that their time is up. It's just, it's awful. And then think about that, right? And have you seen that viral video going around of the white women talking back to the cops enforcing the lockdown at a park? Oh my gosh. if you haven't seen it, I'll explain it real quick. It's everywhere. So these moms brought their kids to play at a public park that was shut down by the city. A cop was called and was told to break it up. So he heads there and he's super calm and he's like understanding and he's just like, listen, I'm just doing my job. If you have such an issue, then take it up with the mayor. I was just told to come down here and break this up. It's my job to enforce it. Like, if you have such an issue, take it up with the mayor. But for now, you've got to leave. It's against citywide rules, blah, blah, blah. And then these women start freaking out. And they're like, but it's a public park. It's my right. Man, my name's Karen. This is like so unconstitutional. And then the Parks and Rec guy comes over and he's like, hey, we're just trying to keep you safe. And they're like, from what? The sun? From the sunshine? The vitamin D from the sunshine? They sound like miserable women. And then one of them is told to leave by this other cop because now it's a whole spectacle. Multiple cops have to come, all this. And this guy's like, ma'am, I've told you 10 times to please leave the park. And she's disobeying him. And he's like, you gotta leave. I've been telling you to leave, ma'am. It's time to go. It's time to go. And then finally he's like, okay, you got 5 seconds to leave. And she's like, fine, what are you going to do? Arrest me? Arrest me then. Do it. And turns around and like gives him her arms to handcuff. So he handcuffs her. I mean, she's sitting there going, what are you going to do? Arrest me? Do it. Arrest me. Okay. So he does. And then she starts freaking out, like, get so-and-so on the phone. Are you recording? Make sure you're recording. Meanwhile, whole time it's been recording and giving even more proof of her being in the wrong. The cops were very patient, in my opinion. These ladies are white, so take what you will with that information. And now all these MAGA people are coming out of the woodwork and defending them like, yeah, stick up for your rights, ladies. The Constitution. First of all, there are rules. Like, for example, you can get fined and arrested for being in a public park past sunset after it closes. That's ridiculous, and most cops just tell you to leave instead, which is exactly what happened here. The park is closed due to a worldwide global pandemic, and they were asked to leave. They refused and disobeyed authority, literally asked to get arrested, and are now playing victim. These public park princesses seem like the same type of people who call the cops on black people for barbecuing in a park without a permit during just a normal day, a nice day, not during a pandemic. And they would cry to the cops saying, they aren't following the rules, blah, 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 when all they're doing is having a nice little family cookout or something when they're completely allowed to. Good old barbecue Becky, am I right? Yet here they are disrespecting authority, trying to fly above the law during a public crisis. Just because you don't believe in the virus doesn't mean you can be reckless and endanger others with your own selfish beliefs. You're putting your children in danger too, and setting a terrible example, by the way. Talking back to law enforcement, disobeying them, and then being like, arrest me, and freaking out when you do get arrested. Don't they wish they would have just left the park like a normal person? Now, this video is all over the internet. They now have to deal with being arrested. And they were like, I'm recording this. Good. Now we see how dumb you guys looked. Thank you for recording it, because now everybody can see that the cops were clearly in the right. And they really thought they did something too. Like, they were like, oh yeah, make sure you're recording this. Okay, yes. It's a recording of you acting a whole fool. Okay, coming up, I'm going to talk about another situation that has not been faring well for the kids.
I want to talk to you guys about this amazing product I've been using lately called Hydrant. If you're like me and you want to kick the coffee habit, but you're worried about your energy levels depleting, to avoid the morning sluggishness and that midday slump, you need to make sure you're hydrated. It's super important. And that's where I've been using Hydrant. And for 25% off your first order, you can go to drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC at checkout. Hydrant is basically flavored electrolyte packets you mix directly into your water to make hydrating your body easy and delicious. And what I love about Hydrant, it's backed by research. The formula was developed by Oxford scientists to provide perfectly balanced, efficient hydration. Again, that's drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC for 25% off your first order. Another really cool thing about Hydrant, there's no synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners. The formula is vegan and you can choose between 3 different flavors or a variety pack. So for all my vegan friendly fellows out there, this one's for you. Again, this is drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hi, welcome back. I was just talking about the public park princesses. That's what I've decided to call them. It's the group of moms who refused to leave a park and said, fine, arrest me, and then got arrested and are now freaking out about it. There's a video. It's all over social media. I have secondhand embarrassment for them from watching it. There's so many things wrong in the video. The nerve of these white women is just incredible. Talking about, officer, you don't want to do this. What? The same people preaching, just obey the law, it's not that hard, are now seen disobeying the law, talking back, resisting, and it still took a good while for the handcuffs to come out. And they came out when they asked to be arrested. I mean, it's incredible. Imagine if they were people of color. The moment they said anything, the moment they would have just said, like, no, this is my right. It's in the Constitution. Well, they would have been slammed on the ground and handcuffed in the back of a car in 30 seconds. So it's just disappointing. How the officers handled the situation, I thought was really great, but I think that they should handle it like that all the time, no matter who they're dealing with. And not to mention what a terrible example this set for their kids. I mean, come on, ladies. And speaking of children, parents around the country have been canceling their kids' checkups, which includes shots and immunizations, because they don't want to bring their kids near any doctor's offices right now, which is totally understandable. The doctors is where sick people are, including coronavirus sick people. So if their kids are healthy and they don't want to expose them to anything by bringing them in for shots and stuff like that, I totally get it. And elective surgeries have been canceled too. So it's kind of like the same thing, but this time it's the parent's choice, which quite honestly, I think if I were a parent, I would also be holding off on bringing my child in for a shot or anything right now. But the problem is, how long is this going to go on for? Immunizations are dropping at a dangerous rate, according to the New York Times. And it's putting millions of children at risk for preventable diseases like the measles and the whooping cough, which are life-threatening diseases. And the whole reason I am such a high-risk person for COVID is because I got the whooping cough as an infant, and my lungs are like a little bit underdeveloped, and I have asthma and all that kind of stuff from it still, and I'm 23. So this disease is something that affected my entire life, and now I'm an at-risk person for coronavirus because of it. So now experts are weighing in and saying, oh my gosh, are we inadvertently creating another health crisis by not vaccinating our kids right now? Dr. Sean T. O'Leary, a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Infectious Diseases, said, quote, "The last thing we want as the collateral damage of COVID-19 are outbreaks of vaccine-preventable diseases, which we will almost certainly see if there continues to be a drop in vaccine uptake." End quote. Vaccines are really important. Little babies are so susceptible to illnesses. And I can't remember, I think maybe I was too young to get my whooping cough vaccine, or they didn't have it in Ireland yet or something back then. I used to live in Ireland when this happened. But if I had had my vaccine, I wouldn't have gotten the whooping cough. So it's like, okay, my baby is this many months old. She's susceptible to any illness out there right now. She needs her immunizations. But if I go to the doctor and try to get her the immunizations that she needs, then I might be exposing us both to COVID. And if I had a kid, I definitely would just keep my baby at home inside right now. I wouldn't risk going in for a vaccine. I wouldn't want to take him anywhere, but that's just like, that's not realistic. And everybody's having that mindset. Everyone right now, nobody's getting their immunizations. And then that's scary, because then what if I obviously have to go to the grocery store? What if I bring back something that won't affect me at all because I'm an adult and I have my vaccinations, but my baby will be very susceptible? And what if she gets something else? It's a catch-22. And then also, what's going to happen when it's safe to return to complete normal? Is everybody going to rush to the doctors to vaccinate their children all at once? That's dangerous too. This is a tough one. So I started looking into it, and some places around the country have held drive-up vaccine clinics, but barely. Like, I can't even find information on them. It's a great idea. We just need more of them, and we need this to be like public knowledge that everybody knows. And I can't even find any info on any of it. And a lot of these drive-through vaccine clinics are from 2017 and before. So why hasn't anybody thought about this and started popping them up more now when we really need them? This is definitely the time to implement something like that. They should be very separate from coronavirus testing, because, they do those drive-thrus too. They shouldn't even be in the same vicinity. But these children, they need their immunization. So if you're hearing this, then spread the word. We need more drive-through vaccine clinics that are completely coronavirus free. And I'm going to try to maybe do something about this, and it starts with spreading the word. So, and also in the pharmaceutical industry, do you guys remember Martin Shkreli? If you don't know him or what he did, first of all, he was nicknamed Pharma Bro, if that rings a bell in your head. But anyways, he was like the leading charge in overpricing life-saving drugs, price gouging, like a drug, like Daraprim, and that treats a lot of different things, but mostly like HIV and AIDS. And it was $13.50 a tablet. And then he raised it 5,000% and raised it to $750 a tablet. So from $13 to $750. And in addition to price gouging these life-saving drugs and pocketing the money, he used the money from this to buy a Wu-Tang Clan album, the only one in existence. He bought it for $2 million. That's what he bought with the money he stole from dying people needing Daraprim. And a lot of people ended up dying because they could no longer afford it. And then he posted this album all over his social media bragging about how he bought it for $2 million. He's a total narcissist. He smirks at everything, shows no remorse. His lawyers during his trial recalled wanting to punch him in the face. They were working really hard on making him relatable and showing remorse. And they had a really difficult time doing that because he's just an a-hole. Like, the whole trial, he just couldn't put on a smile and be nice. His lawyers had a really hard time trying to make him relatable to the jury. He ranted on Twitter. He told politicians to come at him. He's put away in prison for all of his evil doings. He got charged with security fraud and conspiracy stuff. And I think toward the end of his trial, he ended up breaking down, crying or something, and finally took responsibility. Which, I mean, is it true? Like, is he actually sad, or was it just because he was about to be sentenced? But anyways, he's still in prison. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because he has caught the attention of social media lately, and I will tell you why after the break.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hey, again, I was just discussing shots and immunizations and how America is seeing a dramatic drop in them because parents are afraid to take their children to the doctors right now and potentially expose them to the virus, which I totally understand. But vaccines are so important, especially for vulnerable infants. So I think there should be more vaccine drive-thrus popping up everywhere that are far away from COVID and completely COVID-free. Like, you're not allowed to drive up if you're sick and you have to get your temperature taken and all that. I think we should start implementing these so parents can safely get their kids vaccinated right there in their car seats. Okay, and then I went into Pharma bro Martin Shkreli and how he is once again in the public eye of social media. So he's in jail for security fraud, but he's been asking to be let out either for 3 months on house arrest or indefinitely for what his lawyers are calling it compassionate release in order to more adequately study a cure for coronavirus. He's like two or 3 years into his 7-year sentence, and his lawyers are advocating he serve the rest of his sentence from home with an ankle monitor. They're like, other people are getting early release from prisons and jails because of the virus, so why shouldn't Martin? He wants to try and help and is saying like, hey guys, I've devoted a good portion of my life to researching life sciences and rare diseases, so let me out and so I can help. And I have asthma. I don't want to get COVID in here. So this is another tricky situation. This guy definitely deserves to be in prison. He has single-handedly ruined many people's lives and kind of has blood on his hands from price gouging life-saving drugs for his own personal gain. The guy is like a sociopath. But this is a philosophical question almost. Would letting him out be the best thing for the best amount of people? Do we look at this as a utilitarian thing? Like, what would Jeremy Bentham or John Stuart Mill say about this? Because I think it's fair to say we need all the help we can get. And it's no doubt that Shkreli is a smart guy, but he's also proven himself to be evil. What do you think? I'm curious as to what the majority of people say to this. I've seen people on Twitter saying, absolutely not, this guy needs to rot in jail. And the people saying that, I've noticed, are the ones who followed his case from the beginning. And I didn't really follow it very closely. I remember reading about it here and there. And I'm not extremely opposed to letting him out under the circumstances, but still monitoring him and limiting his freedoms. But at the same time, maybe I would feel differently if his actions had influenced my life or a loved one's life. So kind of who am I to say that, you know? So I'm curious if there's anybody out there who has been affected by Shkreli and his price gouging. I wonder what they have to say about him wanting to be let out to work on a cure. He's not violent, so he technically fits the criteria for getting early release because of COVID, but he is extremely evil. So I'd like to hear from anybody listening to this and your opinion, because I just find it interesting. So you can reach out to me on social media and let me know if you feel so inclined. And here we go with more inmate release issues. So like I said, jails are breeding grounds for the virus. So they're trying to lessen the amount of people in them, and they're releasing non-violent people or people whose sentence is almost up anyways. And for the most part, crime as a whole has gone down significantly nationwide because of the pandemic and everybody's staying inside. Well, here in California, 2 men were released because of the virus, and both of them were literally rearrested right after their release for committing another crime. Like, are you serious? You have a saving grace. You get released. How lucky is that? And then the first thing you do when you get out is to wreak some havoc and put yourself back in there. One guy named Rocky Lee Music was charged with carjacking a motorist 40 minutes after he was released from a jail in Dublin, right near where I live. Not even an hour after he was freed, and he was right back in. And this other guy, Owen Aguilar, who was released from a jail down in Fresno, was arrested for setting 9 fires less than a week after he was freed. So he's back in jail too. And fires are no joke anywhere, but especially here in California. And I like to believe in second chances. You know, people made mistakes. They want to change. But in these guys' case, they don't deserve to be out here among us. My mom always said to us as kids, I gave you an inch and you took a mile. And that's kind of what this reminds me of. A criminal, he's just being a criminal. And now that's all they are. That's what they've told the world they are. Downright criminals. How could they take advantage of this situation like that? It's really hard on everybody. But I guess, right, because they're criminals. But this isn't the case with everyone. There are plenty of good people out there who have been released and are doing wonderful. There are plenty of people who did make a mistake, took responsibility, and changed. And there are plenty of good people in jail who shouldn't even be there in the first place. Like, why are people still sitting in jail for marijuana offenses from years and years ago when it's legal now? But the good thing is those are the people getting early release right now because of the pandemic. But it shouldn't have taken a pandemic to release those people. All right, up next, I'm going to talk about a boob job that saved a life.
Always on the go, but the day just won't be one without your Hollywood fix. Let Golden State Media Concepts Entertainment Podcast take care of that. Jordan and Keith is Entertainment Tonight meets Access Hollywood.
I'm Jordan. The guy laughing, that's Keith.
Yeah, I'm Keith.
An all-inclusive look of pop culture.
Hey there. Before the break, I was talking about Martin Shkreli's plea for an early prison release to work on finding a cure for coronavirus. I also mentioned 2 inmates who were released from jails in California and put right back in for committing crimes. One guy committed a crime 40 minutes after he was released. So now let's talk about something bizarre pertaining to breast implants. A woman was shot point blank from a very close range in the chest. And doctors believe she's alive because of her breast implants. The silicone changed the trajectory of the bullet, so it completely missed vital organs. And this woman showed up at a Toronto hospital, this was in Canada, and literally just walked in for treatment. The lady got shot. And she walked in there saying, hey, I need some help. I got shot. They couldn't believe how well and calm she was for just being shot in the chest. They were like, where did you get shot? And she's like, right here in the chest. I'm bleeding everywhere. And they're like, oh my God, how are you walking? And she suffered a fractured rib, a gunshot wound, and broken implants, but that's it, which is nothing for someone who got shot point blank in the chest, really close up. The implant ricocheted the bullet from the left breast across her sternum and then past the right breast where it fractured her rib. And if it weren't for the implants, it would have gone right into her breast and tore through her vital organs, and she most likely would have died. Isn't that a crazy story? And it also has a lot to do with sheer luck too. But I mean, wow. I bet she's very glad that she got a boob job. It's kind of like she was walking around with her own bulletproof vest. Well, not really, but you know what I mean. And here's another bizarre phenomenon. Here I go about space again. There's an asteroid that's going to be flying by our planet next week. It's estimated to be 1.2 miles wide. And here's the kicker. According to new images from an observatory in Puerto Rico, the asteroid looks like it's wearing a face mask. How crazy is that? The asteroid, which they call asteroid 52768 1998 OR2, was first spotted in 1998. And in 2020, right when it's going to be passing Earth, it looks like it's wearing a face mask during our pandemic. The universe is so freaking cool. The flyby is expected on April 29th, just before 3 a.m. Pacific time. I think it was like 2:56, so middle of the night. But, I mean, there's no such thing as time right now during quarantine, so I bet a lot of people will be awake to see it. It's not the largest asteroid ever to go by Earth, but it's the largest within the next 2 months, I guess. And it's expected to make another flyby all the way in 2079. In 2079, it's going to fly by even closer. So it's important to keep an eye on it and other asteroids, because if it were to hit Earth, that could be very devastating, as the dinosaurs saw. And they are wondering if we only think that its features look like a face mask because we're thinking about face masks. Like, I wonder if we would still think, oh my gosh, does that look like a face mask if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic? It's kind of like we've been talking about them so much, our mind just went to that. And it's just because face masks are the center of everything right now. So if they weren't, then maybe the scientists wouldn't have even noticed. But it's still pretty cool. And you can look online and see a picture. It totally does look like a face mask. And I like to think it's the universe telling us something. But if this is not the biggest asteroid to whiz past Earth at over a mile wide, then what is? Well, that would be asteroid 3122 Florence 1981 ET3. This one is estimated between 2.5 and 5.5 miles wide. Jeesh. And it flew by Earth on September 1st, 2017. And it's expected to make another flyby September of 2057. But this one here that's flying by next week on April 29th, I like to think of it as the universe's way of showing solidarity with us by it wearing a face mask, or perhaps the universe is telling us to wear our face masks. Either way, it's pretty cool. And know who else is making sure we have face masks? The 43 men who voluntarily lived in the factory they work in to produce millions of pounds of raw PPE materials to help fight coronavirus. Yes, that's right. The Washington Post broke the story, and I've seen it all over Twitter now. For 28 days, these men transformed their offices at the factory they work at into makeshift dorms. They brought air mattresses, their toothbrushes. They did not leave this factory. They worked around the clock for up to 12-hour shifts to produce tens of millions of pounds of raw material. And they decided to stay in the factory because they're essential workers, so they're going back and forth from home to the factory, back and forth. So they didn't want to expose themselves or expose anybody because they're really important people. You know, they really need, we need these materials. And if they all get sick, what's going to happen then? So they decided to just keep working and living at the factory. And then they could like close off the factory too to outsiders. So they were completely safe in there. And all these men, they volunteered to do this. Nobody was like forcing them. They all said, yeah, let's get this done and let's do it. So they went from coworkers to roommates, and they turned their little office kitchen into a mess hall and their emergency operations center into a lounge room. And they made it work, and they did a phenomenal job. The key ingredient in protective equipment like face masks is something called polypropylene. They make other things in the factory, but they shifted their efforts into focusing on making that ingredient to sell to the medical manufacturers, which they then use for face masks, medical gowns, and even disinfectant wipes. The company, which is called Braskem Plants, it's in Pennsylvania, by the way, they said that they estimate that they were able to make 40 million pounds of polypropylene over the last month. And that, hypothetically, is enough to make about 500 million N95 masks if that's the only thing that it was being used for. And they decided the live-in thing, so they weren't risking infection. They closed it off to outsiders, and they were paid 24 hours a day. And they also had a little wage increase for their hours and overtime and all that. Some of them brought their Xboxes. Some people brought games like cornhole, stuff like that to keep themselves entertained in there. And they made big, huge dinners together. They requested more pots and pans. I think they even brought in like a cook. And one night they even had filet mignon for like over 40 people. I think ended up being in this factory. I think there are like 28 workers, and then the rest were like the cook and staff managing it or whatever. And they even made a chore list to keep the bathrooms clean and stuff like that. It was like their own mini community. And what a respectable group of people. I am so proud of them, and I hope they know they have made a difference for sure. I would call these people heroes as well right now. It's a great story to tell too. All right, and up next, I'm going to talk about the NFL draft. Sports.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hey, I just talked about a woman whose breast implants saved her vital organs from a bullet. I also talked about the asteroid expected to fly by Earth April 29th, and its features have made scientists think it looks like it's wearing a face mask. But the most important thing I said was about the factory workers who volunteered to live in the factory to work around the clock to produce the key ingredient in PPE. Now I'm going to shift gears here and talk about phone calls. Have you guys noticed that you can't really make up excuses anymore? Like, we're all just sitting at home, all of us. So what's an excuse if you don't want to answer the phone? Or what do you say when you don't want to be on the phone any longer? Most of the time, people just say, like, okay, gotta go, I'm about to head out. Well, guess what? No, you're not. Not right now. Or I'll be like, oh, gotta go. Someone's at the door. Well, ain't nobody at the door right now. So there's this trend on Twitter talking about how to end phone conversations during quarantine now that you have nowhere to go. And it's hilarious. Everybody seems to be having this problem, and everyone is still trying to lie to be polite. One person said they were like, well, I'm going to take my dinner out of the oven now. I got to go. And then they realized it wasn't even noon yet. But they were so disoriented time-wise that they didn't even realize until after they had hung up. And the other person was just kind of like, okay. And I saw a lot of people using their phone dying as an excuse, which is a good one because everybody's been constantly using and on their phones, so it would make sense that the battery is drained. But at the same time, you're at home. It's not like you don't have your charger. And some people are just being blunt and they're like, okay, that's enough talking. Everything sucks. We'll talk again some other time. Bye. And I guess that's the best way to go because, you know, if you don't want to be on the phone anymore, just say it. Who cares? I mean, whoever you're talking to will probably understand. Or maybe they also want to get off the phone, but they don't know how to say it. So everybody's kind of in the same boat. And that was just like a silly little trend that I saw on Twitter of people talking about the excuses that they've had to come up with during quarantine to either not answer the phone or get off of the phone. All right. And finally, the NFL draft is here and it's all virtual. Roger Goodell usually announces it, which he still is, but this time from his man cave is what he called it. So just like usual, it will take place over 3 days. The first round was last night. The second and third rounds were today, and the final round tomorrow. The NFL still really wants to see everyone's reactions, and they put a really big emphasis on that. So they sent out and fully equipped nearly 60 top prospects with iPhones, microphones, cameras, all that kind of stuff to set up in their homes to fully capture everything to be broadcast on TV. It will still be airing on ABC, ESPN, and the NFL Network. And the network usually uses about 10 different feeds in normal circumstances because everybody's just all together. But under these stay-at-home orders, they're going to be using 150 remote feeds at one time. So they're going to have 150 different screens to be monitoring. And can you believe that? I wonder who's responsible for that. That must be kind of stressful, a lot of work, because somebody has to decide who's doing what and what moment that would be best for everybody to see. And little cutie Joey Burrow, the quarterback for LSU, he tweeted before the draft started, and he said, "Nobody's allowed to make fun of me tonight. None of the barbershops are open." And that is very relatable. It got a lot of attention on Twitter. And the draft is much needed normalcy and relief to everyone, but especially these players. The season is scheduled to start September 10th, and I really hope that happens. And last but not least, Warner Music Group is hosting a virtual festival called Play On Fest as a benefit to the World Health Organization's COVID Response Fund. It's going to be playing April 24th through the 26th, and it will feature past performances of huge artists like Coldplay, Cardi B, Ed Sheeran, Lil Uzi Vert, Roddy Ricch, and a lot more. And it's going to be streaming on YouTube, or you can just head to Play On Fest's website and stream it there. It's not live. It's recorded performances from like a past concert from these artists, but it's still a little fun thing to watch. So check that out if you're bored over the weekend. Okay, folks, that's all for tonight. Keep your hands washed. Make sure to wear your mask when you're leaving the house. Even the asteroid that's scheduled to fly by Earth is wearing one, so you can too. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Social Media News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Once again, I am your host, Kayla Moeller. And if you could do me a favor, subscribe to the show, That helps us out. And don't forget to give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And also let me know your opinion on that Martin Shkreli guy and his wanting to be released early from his prison sentence to work on a COVID cure. Thanks, guys, for listening, and have a great night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Social Media Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.